Okay, in this lesson, we will discuss circles. As you watch this video, be sure you complete this key terms chart. Everywhere there's an orange box, you need to click inside of the box and type your answer. There are 12 of these orange boxes throughout the document that you'll fill in. And once you've watched the entire video and filled out this chart, then you'll turn the assignment in. This is going to be a very, very helpful chart and study material and resource to refer back to throughout Module 1, Topic 1. So first off, first key term is circle. If I were to ask you, what is a circle? What would you say to me? In math, we define a circle as the set of all points that are equidistant. Equidistant from a point called the center. Now, you may be wondering, what does equidistant mean? Well, equidistant means what it sounds like, equal distance. So a circle is the collection of points or the set of points that are all the same distance from a point called the center. Every point on the circle is the same distance from the center. So as you can see, if here's my circle, and I'm going to call the center of the circle point B, every single one of these dots on the edge of the circle is the same distance from the center. That's what makes up a circle. The center of the circle is the point from which all points on the circle are equidistant. And we name a circle by its center point. Okay, so the question here, number 2, what is the name of the circle below? Well, what point is in the center? That would be B, right? So we would call this circle B. That's what you'll fill in the box, circle B. All right, so first key term is a circle. Second key term, radius. The radius is the distance from the center of the circle to any point on the perimeter of the circle. All right, so as you see here, you see that red dot which says center. And if I go from the center to the perimeter or to the edge of the circle, that's called the radius. Okay, now there are all kinds of radii, which is the plural term for radius. Anytime I go from the center to the perimeter of the circle, so like from here to there, that's a radius. From here to there, that's a radius. From here to there, that's a radius. So there's all kinds of radii that you could draw. But as long as you go from the center to the perimeter of the circle, that is a radius. And so as you can tell, here in number 3, it says the radius is halfway across the circle. The radius is halfway across the circle. So that's your second key term, radius. Third key term is the diameter. The diameter of a circle is the distance all the way across the circle. All the way across the circle. So if the radius is halfway across the circle, the diameter is all the way across the circle. Here's the key point though, it must go through the center. So all the way across the circle, but through the center. Okay, so as you can see in this picture, if I go from this point right here, okay, all the way across the circle through the center to the other edge, okay, that green line right there is a diameter. Okay, what if I did this though? What if I went from this edge? Let's assume that's a straight line. Is that a diameter? I went from one edge to the other edge, Mr. Roper. Isn't that a diameter? You should say no, right? Did it go through the center? No. Okay, so from one edge of the circle to the other edge through the center, that makes up a diameter. A diameter. Okay, you have the point right here that says you can put 2 radius lines together to form the diameter. Okay, so you see this purple line from the center to the edge of the circle? What if I put that radius line right here as well? So what if I just continued it all the way here? If I put this purple radius line and this blue radius line together, they form a diameter, right? All the way across the circle through the center. Okay, so And number 5 right here, it says the diameter is always twice as long as the radius. The diameter is always twice as long as the radius because 2 radii make a diameter. So for example, if the radius is 3, that means the diameter is 6. So if from here to here is 3 centimeters, then that means from here to here would also be 3, right? Every radius would be 3 because every point on the edge of the circle is 3 centimeters from the center, okay? But if I have the purple line and the blue line put together, I would go 3 centimeters and 3 centimeters more, or 6 centimeters, okay? So you try number 6 and 7. If the radius is 4, then the diameter is what? If this radius is 4, that means if halfway across the circle is 4, how long is all the way across the circle? Well, it would be twice that, right? It would be twice of 4, 2 4s, which would be 8. Okay. Now, if you're given the diameter, so all the way across the circle, if all the way across the circle is 10, then what is the radius? What is halfway across the circle? Well, what's half of 10? 5, right? So if the diameter is 10, the radius is half of that, or 5. Okay, going down, it says identify a diameter in the circle below. So you have many options here given this circle. As long as you go from one edge of the circle to the other edge of the circle through the center, that would be a diameter. So give it your best shot in this box for a diameter. Try to go from one letter to the other letter. So like, for example, if I go from D to E, that looks like it's going to go all the way across the circle through the center. So I could put DE in there. There are other options as well. Okay, so we have a circle, we have radius, we have diameter. The next key term is circumference. Circumference. Repeat that after me. Circumference. Good. So the distance all the way around the circle. The distance all the way around the circle is the circle's circumference. Now, you're already familiar with other shapes, other polygons. If we were to find the perimeter of a shape, that is the distance around the shape. Like the distance around a triangle would be its perimeter, right? But because a circle is a special shape, its perimeter gets a special name, and we call that the circumference. Okay, next I'm going to introduce you to pi. P-I, not P-I-E, not pie as in like what you eat, not apple pie or pumpkin pie or whatever kind of pie is your favorite. This is pi pi. Pi is a special number in math. And this right here is the pi symbol. That's what pi looks like as a symbol. Okay? Pi is the ratio of the circumference of the circle to the diameter. So pi is the ratio of the circumference of the circle to the diameter. Okay? Below that, I have what pi is equal to. Pi is equal to C over D, where C is the circumference and D is the diameter. And this is basically the equation for what this sentence above it just said. So the circumference of the ratio of the circumference to the diameter. Below that, it says the diameter of any circle will go around the circle pi times. So a pi number of times. The diameter will go around the circle 3 times and a little bit more. So let me try to illustrate this on this Jamboard. Okay, so here's my circle. And this red line, okay, this red line goes from one edge of the circle through the center all the way to the other edge of the circle. So that is the diameter. Let's say this was like a piece of string. That red line was a piece of string, and I was going to take that string and wrap it around the circle. Okay? If I wrap it around the circle the first time, from here all the way around to here, okay, where the orange highlight ends, that means the that shows where the diameter has been wrapped around the circle one time. So I put diameter around the circle one time. Okay. Now let's say I do it again. This blue highlight from here to here, okay, the diameter goes around the circle two times. So it's gone around once, and then it's gone around twice. Okay, then I do it again. I take the diameter of the circle, that piece of string, and I wrap it around the circle the third time. So from here to here. All right, so far I have wrapped this diameter around the circle one time, two times, three times. Okay, but as you can see, there's a little bit more space. There's a little bit more space. And we call that little bit more space, maybe we'll approximate it to be 0.14. Okay, and this is where pi comes from. Pi is the ratio of the diameter of the circle to its, or circumference of the circle to its diameter. So if you take the diameter of any circle and wrap it around the circle, it will go around the circle three times and a little bit more. And that's where we get pi from. Okay, so therefore we approximate pi to be 3.14 in decimal form, and we usually use 3.14, but sometimes we are told in the problem to use it in fraction form, and so we use 22/7 or 22/7. And so we say pi is approximately, that squiggly equal sign is approximately, pi is approximately 3.14 or 22/7. Number 11, pi is what we call an irrational number. Irrational number. So that means it cannot be written as a fraction. Now, I just said that we sometimes approximate it to be 22/7, and so that is an approximation. That is not what it's actually equal to. That is approximately what it's equal to. So that's why it cannot be written as a fraction. We also say that pi is non-terminating. It is non-terminating. That means its digits never end, and pi is also non-repeating. So none of its digits repeat in any pattern at all. So the number pi has an infinite number of decimal digits that never repeat and that never end, right? So it could go on and on and on forever and ever and ever. So just a few of the digits would be like 3.14159265359 and on and on and on for all eternity. It never ends. And so that's why we approximate it to be 3.14. Now, when calculating the circumference of the circle, so the distance around the circle, we've already said that pi is equal to the circumference of the circle to its diameter. Oftentimes you will see the circumference formula written as C, circumference, is equal to pi times diameter. Notice how pi is written right next to D because this is understood to be multiplication. This formula right here is coming from what pi is, pi being the ratio of the circumference to the diameter. And just using our knowledge of inverse operations, if I wanted to solve this equation for C, I would undo this division by multiplication, right? I would undo this multiplication or undo this division by multiplying by D, right? I would multiply both sides of the equation by D. And when I do that, these D's right here would simplify because I have a D in the numerator and a D in the denominator. And so C would be by itself. C would be equal to pi times diameter. Pi times diameter, which is what this says. Okay? Now, we can also use this formula that involves radius because we already know that it takes two radii to make one diameter. Okay, so we can use this formula or this formula to find the circumference of a circle. So for example, it says if the diameter is 10 meters, then the circumference would be equal to, C would be equal to pi times diameter. Pi is 3.14, so I plugged in 3.14. The diameter is 10, so I plugged in 10 for the diameter. What's 3.14 times 10? 31.4. So if the diameter is 10 meters, the circumference of the circle is 31.4 meters. All right, so you try this one. It says the diameter is 8. Then the circumference is what? So we could write circumference equals pi times diameter. I know that pi is 3.14, or at least that's what we approximated to be. So I plug 3.1 in for pi, and I'm going to plug d, I'm going to plug 8 in for the diameter. Okay, so if I just use my calculator here and do 3.14 times 8, that will give me the circumference of the circle. All right, so all your orange boxes should now be completed and filled in. Right here, I just have a summary that I would like for you to look at for parts of the circle. Summary of circumference, radius, and diameter. And here is a summary of pi and circumference like we talked about. Okay, so once you have all your orange boxes filled in, you can go ahead and click Turn In. I'm going to go over to Module 1, Topic 1.1, Day 1 form, and we'll work out these first 6 problems. All right, so in number 1, it says, what is the circumference of the circle? Circumference. So we're trying to find the circumference, so let's use our circumference formula. Circumference is equal to pi times diameter. So I'm going to write down C equals pi d. Now, what am I given here in the circle? It looks like I have from the edge of the circle to the center. So would that be the radius or the diameter halfway across the circle? That would be the radius, right? So I could use this formula. I could use circumference equals 2 times pi times r. I could do that, right? So let's do it that way. Circumference is equal to 2. I'm going to plug in what pi is equal to. Pi is equal to 3.14. Notice I'm putting that in parentheses because I'm multiplying. Circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius. And the radius I see is 8. Okay, so using my calculator, I'll do 2 times 3.14 times 8. And that should give me my answer of 50.24. And that would be the circumference. The circumference would be 50.24 meters. Now, let's say I use this formula. Circumference equals pi times diameter. If the radius is 8, what would the diameter be? If it's 8 meters halfway across the circle, what would all the way across the circle be? Remember, I can put this radius next to another radius, and so I would go 8 meters and then 8 more. And so you could say the diameter is 16, right? So if you had circumference equals pi, or 3.14, times the diameter of 16, guess what 3.14 times 16 is? Also 50.24. Number 2, what is the circumference of the circle? So circumference equals pi times diameter. Notice how I write that formula down before I start going about solving the equation. So my circumference is equal to pi, let's use 3.14 for pi, times the diameter. It looks to me like from one edge of the circle to the other edge of the circle through the center. Okay, that is the diameter. 7 is the diameter, so I'm going to plug that in for D. I'll do 3.14 times 7 in my calculator, and I would get 21.98. 21.98. Number 3 says use the circumference of a circle formula to determine each unknown. So I'm going to use 3.14 for pi. It says compute the diameter of the circle with a circumference of 65.94. Okay, so let's write down the circumference formula. C equals pi times diameter, and let's plug in what we know. We know the circumference, right? The circumference is 65.94. So right here for C, I'm going to plug in right below it 65.94. Bring my equal sign down. Do I know what pi is? Yep, they told me to use 3.14 for pi, so I'm going to plug in 3.14. I don't know the diameter, so I'm going to leave D as D. All right, that's what I want to find. I want to find the diameter. Now, let's use our knowledge of inverse operations. Over here on the right side, I have 3.14 times D. So how would I solve for D? How would I undo the multiplication? You should say division, right? I would divide both sides by 3.14. I would divide both sides by 3.14. Right, so that these 3.14 simplify, so all I have left on the right side is D. My diameter is equal to this stuff, 65.94 divided by 3.14. Put that in your calculator, and that will give you the diameter of the circle. Number 4, use the circumference of a circle formula to determine each unknown. So let me use circumference equals pi times diameter. Now let's plug in what I know. Compute the radius. Well, I don't see radius in this formula. But if I figure out what diameter is, couldn't I determine the radius? I could. And so let me show you how to do that. It says compute the radius of a circle with the circumference of this. So I'm going to plug in that number for C, 109.9. That is the circumference. I'll bring my equal sign down. I know what pi is equal to. We approximate that to be 3.14. I'm going to leave D as D, okay, because I don't know the diameter. Now, just like we did in the previous problem, to undo this multiplication, I'm going to divide both sides by 3.14 to undo the multiplication. These 3.14s would simplify to D, right? And so D is equal to 109.9 divided by 3.14. If I put that in my calculator, 109.9 divided by 3.14, that equals 35. Okay, now that's what the diameter is. I wasn't asked to compute the diameter, I was asked to compute the radius. But if I know the diameter, I also know the radius, right? If the diameter is all the way across the circle, the radius is halfway across the circle. So I need half of this number. So take 35 and divide by 2, and you would get 17.5. So the radius is 17.5. That's what I'll put in. That is the radius of the circle. All right, 2 more and we'll be done. Number 5, a circular patio has a diameter of 35 yards. So I have the circular patio all the way across the circle, 35. So my diameter is 35. What is the circumference of the patio? It says use this fraction for pi. So let me write down the circumference formula. Circumference equals pi times diameter. Let's plug in what I know. I know that pi in this instance is 22/7. That's what they told me to use. 22/7. I'm going to multiply that by the diameter of 35. Now I'm going to write 35 as a fraction by putting it over 1. Now I'm going to look and see, can I cross simplify? 22/1, that can't be cross simplified, but 35/7 can. These are both divisible by 7. So 35 divided by 7 is 5, and 7 divided by 7 is 1. So I cross simplified. Now I simply multiply across the numerators. 22 times 5, that would be 110, right? And on the bottom, 1 times 1 is 1. So my answer is 110 yards, right? Just put the number in, just put 110 in. Okay, last one, then you'll finish the rest on your own. Number 6, a circular light fixture has a radius of 21 centimeters. So here's my circular light fixture. It's got a radius of 21. So halfway across the circle is 21. What is the circumference of the light fixture? So let me use circumference equals pi times diameter. This is the formula that I like using. You can use 2 pi r as well. Let's plug in what I know. I'm going to use 22/7 for pi, like they told me to. So I'll put 22/7 times the diameter. Now, I wasn't told the diameter. It says the radius is 21, but if you know the radius, you also know the diameter, right? If halfway across the circle is 21, that means all the way across the circle is twice that. So 21 plus 21, or 42. So the diameter is 42. I'm going to put 42/1 since I'm multiplying fractions here. Now I'm going to look and see, can I cross simplify? 22/1? Nope. But 42/7 could be simplified, right? These are both divisible by 7. 42 divided by 7 is 6, and 7 divided by 7 is 1. So on the top, I have 22 times 6, and 22 times 6 is 132. My denominators, I just have 1 times 1, that would be 1. So my circumference is 132 centimeters. So in the text box, I just put in 132. That is the circumference. So I know that was a lot, okay? But we'll get some more practice in the days ahead. Be sure you finish the form. At the very end, click submit to view your score. If you miss any, come back in and fix the